Are you a diver and you maybe even take photos or videos underwater? Then this live stream is for you. Because we believe that everyone who takes images underwater is already an ocean ambassador. And to make sure that you can do your job properly and inspire people out there to care for the ocean and eventually protect it, we collected your questions beforehand on social media, and we're going to ask those questions to creative professionals from the industry. And we are sending live from the world's largest water sports show here in Düsseldorf, the Boat Show, which is taking place from 18th to 26th of January. You're going to find us live in Hall 11 at the Pixel World workshop stage. Make sure you follow us on social media, on the Behind the Mask Facebook page and on the Behind the Mask YouTube channel. Turn on your notifications and most importantly, ask your questions down in the comments, and maybe we will even be able to pick up your question and forward your question to our guest. And one more thing, by leaving us a comment, you already have a chance to win amazing prizes. Yes, you have. And Evan is back here at 3:30. Evan, you're still super nervous, or are you okay?
Oh, look at this.
Okay. Evan has been with us earlier, before. And meanwhile, you've been to Munich?
Munich and Austria.
How was it?
Cold. I got thermals on right now.
Ah, okay, cool.
I'm not used to this, man. California does not have this type of weather.
What are we talking about? Obviously, macro film making. And in this respect, we talk about creative macro video lighting. Why is that a thing?
I think there's a progression for all macro shooters where they start two lights on camera, floodlights, and they just light everything they can just to kind of get ID shots, and they slowly build their skill set. But after you see a subject 5, 10, 20 times, you want to shoot it in a different way. And that's where the creative lighting comes in, because with macro, it is all about the lighting. That's how you stand out. That's how you separate the subject from the environment. And it really allows you to get creative.
Guys, you know, we've been lucky enough to actually work together on a project in Indonesia. Here we have our friend from Siladen there. So I actually saw how you work and how everything looks like, you know, because in macro filmmaking, you never really have the diver and the behind the scenes things as part of the end product. But if you happen to see that, and if you see this rare animal in the ocean, how he does things, it's pretty cool, because it is basically the same thing as you would light anything in the studio. Like, if I would light my little watch for Amazon, selling it, you know, you basically do the same thing. There's like lights on tripods and, you know, a lot of things around, and we will go a little bit deeper into that. But I think we show another premiere. Can we say that? Or is it just a selection?
Yeah, no,
of
it's something that I put together for this presentation. And let's take a look.
Yeah, all shot in Indonesia, Siladen, and I think Lembe as well.
Yeah, NAD Resort.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think we have to say anything about it. Just look at the colors and look at the light and look at how different it looks. How did you do that?
That,
Yeah.
that's animation.
Nice.
I bought it.
You know, I don't know. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, that
You have
video.
like colorful.
What do you guys
Critters?
think? Lame? No.
No, I think it's amazing.
The colored light thing isn't for everybody.
I don't think so.
I can't
I
think
don't
of
think so.
anyone who would be upset at watching that.
There's definitely a part of the industry that likes to keep it pure.
There's always people who want behavior shots for 45 minutes with classical music. Nothing wrong with that. But I mean, you have colorful creatures, you know, and then something in the background as well. Use colors, do your thing. I mean, come on. I thought macro shooting is something, you know, for me, like traveling in Germany, you can do it when you're old and you're not able to move anymore. But this really is something different. So, what do you want to do? You want to ramble a little bit and make promotion for it, or we should ask some question first, or look at gear, or whatever?
I can talk about the production as we talk about the questions. So, basically, as you mentioned, we had a project together in North Sulawesi, and I always am inspired by the still photographers. I think for every videographer, there's at least 100 people taking stills, and often they lead the way. So I closely watch what trends are, what people are doing, how they're pushing the still photography envelope, so to speak. And there's a guy out there named Ace Wu, and he was tinkering with colored light. So when I had the opportunity to work with you, it was something I wanted to employ. I didn't realize how hard it was. You get very low keeper rate. You basically maybe 1 or 2 shots a dive maximum, because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of room for error.
What's the reason for that? I mean, I didn't have the impression that, I mean, I saw you a little bit like your own little disco studio, and it always looked amazing. Yeah, of course.
One of the things that I've done throughout the course of my shooting career is I talked about having on-camera lights, and that's the first stage. High lumen, floodlights attached to the camera. You light everything that the lens can see, and you just hope it's in focus with good composition. A couple years ago, I elected to take the lights off the camera. And what that allowed me to do is by setting up the lights independently, I could move the camera and the lighting wouldn't change. And if I could find a subject that would kind of chill, I could adjust composition, focus, all sorts of things, and again, the lighting would never change. For those of you watching, I'm sure you've had the challenge where you're shooting so tight that the slightest light adjustment or camera adjustment will have negative effects. So there's another guy out there named Ken Thongpla, and he took a photo of his rig, and he had this. And it's very unassuming, but basically it's a garden stake. I use this instead of a tripod, and I attach lock line arms.
Oh, you use it as a tripod for the lights.
Correct. And I can carry anywhere from 4 to 6 of these with different lights on it, and basically set up light stands like you're in a studio. And it allows me a lot of tools, and it allows me to get very creative. The downside is it's a slow process. And that's why the keeper rate is low, because if you go to start setting up lights and then you're working on your composition, a lot of these times, these guys are gone. After a while, he bails.
I mean, look at him. He's amazing. Look at him. He's amazing.
But if you watch at the end of the shot, he bails. So it's hard to get quality shots, especially for a good duration of time. As a filmmaker, you know you want at least 7 seconds. 30 seconds is kind of my goal, but it's difficult. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't look that difficult, but I get what you're saying. Like, don't be too humble.
I just remember when we were diving together.
You were
with you.
Yeah.
And it was like this.
Yeah, okay. Great. No, I don't know. I mean, so is that something, like, we never really talked about where the idea actually come from? Like, you said you have some inspiration from some photographers, but in the end, you know, what the project we did there with the Island of Color, this one was also the inspiration for me to make the whole film about that concept.
And that was what was really cool, is that there was a creative synergy. We were both kind of on the same page and wanted to take the project in a similar direction.
Let's answer a question. How to make a video capturing mostly macro shots more interesting? Well, I mean, that's obviously the answer right there.
Yep. And there's some other techniques. I think for most shooters, it's to capture some type of behavior. And one of the principles that I kind of implement or employ is that I shoot 30-second clips, and I do it over and over and over of the exact same subject until something cool happens. Maybe it's a yawn, maybe it's the...
Super cool. A
right?
yawn is amazing.
But sometimes it may take 5 or 10 minutes. And I do the 30-second technique instead of just letting the camera record for 5 minutes. Because if you have 5 minutes of raw footage and you go to look for those 7 seconds, one, it's difficult to find, and two, you've got these huge files. So by just hitting record for 30 seconds, stop, record again, I can delete 8 clips and just keep the one.
Good efficiency advice.
Yeah.
You're not gonna have a lot of time in between. Like you hit the shutter to turn the camera off and immediately to turn it on
Immediately
again.
back on, just wait for something to happen. So that's one technique. Obviously, we've talked about lighting. Another technique would be in post-production. I think the way you package the media has a huge impact on the audience.
Of course.
For the most part, we're all shooting similar subjects. We're all going to similar destinations and shooting hermit crabs, coral shrimp, things like that, frogfish. So it's how you package that material and share it with the audience that will have a huge impact on, making it interesting or unique.
How much of the coolness is because of the post-production?
I rely on it heavily. I think it's a lot about editing. Growing up, my family owned a dive shop, and I didn't want anything to do with them. I looked at scuba diving and my parents as lame. And a lot of it had to do with the marketing. If any of you saw the last presentation, Florian was so generous enough to show my mom in a gold skin. And
it looked pretty fancy. I mean,
yeah.
Fancy's a very nice word to use, but I just didn't see it as a sport that I wanted to be involved in, because dirt bike racing and snowboarding was just much more appealing based on the way it was marketing. So when I got involved in shooting underwater, I wanted to take an alternative approach. Hence, even my company name is a little alternative. So when I edit, I'm trying to target the younger audience, which is also something we touched base on for the last presentation. Yeah. Just kind of be a little bit unique. You mentioned classical music. I won't do classical music.
Oh, well.
So it's not for
Maybe
me.
there is a time in your life when you regret this statement, when you sit there in your rocking chair. But
well,
anyhow.
maybe 40 years from now.
No, but I mean, if you look at those shots, what did you do in post-production color-wise?
Nothing. I actually had to desaturate a lot of these colors. So for some reason, there's this trend industry-wide of just jacking up the color and making everything look like Skittles or like Starburst. And by balancing the colored light with white light, you get very, very saturated colors. So I had to kind of tone them down to make them look a little bit more realistic.
Okay. That's a good point. What about the white balance here?
White balance.
How do you do that?
So I white balance to match the white light, 5,000 or 5,500 Kelvin. And the lights that I use for color have multiple colors, but it's kind of limited: red, purple, blue. I experimented with all 3 colors and found that blue and purple are a little bit more attractive. And just high power, color, color, color. Here's a sample of some red, but for the most part, I think it's a little bit more appealing to go with purple or blue.
There's one shot like this shot. Is it like how do you get a different color in the middle than everywhere around?
So we talked about the stake and we talked about the arm. Basically, I went onto Amazon. I bought a $7 garden stake, 3/4 inch lock line base, and then just lock line with a YS adapter. So you've got this. You put it into the muck. You lean it over. From there, you can do rear lighting, top lighting, side lighting, pretty much anything. And I would just isolate the light straight above it. and just make sure it doesn't kind of spill or wash off onto the sand. And then I would have another one with the colored light and just wash everything in purple. And the white would overpower the purple and kind of create a cone.
That's interesting because that's what I thought. You know, like it's not only blue in the background; it's actually blue all around.
Yep.
But there's one spot in the middle that has a completely different light. So this
Correct.
is just like the white light that brings out the natural color of the critter.
Yep.
And is overpowering the blue light.
And the white balance is set for the white light. And there are some earlier takes where I might have missed it a little bit and you see white on the sand, but that's again why I continue to shoot and shoot and shoot. Sometimes I make no lighting adjustments, others I'll make small tweaks just to kind of improve on composition or the lighting.
What do we see here?
I see a circle. I see a light. This is basically one of the colored lights that I utilize. It's 2,500 lumens. In the middle is your traditional white light, but I didn't use this fixture for that. You've got blue and red LEDs, and you can cycle through different colors. You get the purple by mixing all the LEDs. So this was the light that I used.
So all the lights that you bring, they have like multiple color settings?
Yeah, for like a light like this, you could cycle through white, red, blue, and then purple. And all the colored lights are dimmable. So again, it's about balance between white light and colored light. If you don't have enough white light, it's just going to be all color, and the subject won't pop.
Yeah, I think you always need this kind of color contrast between the different layers of interest in the picture that you can separate it and get the eye at the right spot. Great. Nice, nice, nice.
Wow.
Nice. Nice.
Nice.
Nice. Really interesting. Lucas is asking, I've been trying some snoot still photography with different effects, but not video yet. There are some snoots for flashlight, but haven't seen any for video. Any you could recommend also? Have you tried snoot videography shooting? Maybe I'm overthinking and I just doesn't make sense. No, it makes total sense. And I think a snoot just looks like that. I think you have one here.
Yeah. So the term snoot is basically any device that shapes light. And in the industry, you've got fiber optic, you've got cones, you've got little tips like that.
Let's explain a little bit what the snoot actually is. Because
so what it does is it shapes light. You take maybe a wide light and you narrow it down to a small
because you screw
degree.
something on it. This is, you know, the right part there. The light comes out. Just
So with this particular light, there is an attachable or detachable tip, but that tip is so small that it's like the size of a Tic Tac or a freckle, and I find it very difficult to use because most subjects that I'm shooting are maybe an inch. It's metric here, so 2 centimeters, about. It's about this big, and
2 centimeters.
I find that this light is more effective without the tip on it. So again, we talked about traditional lights being very wide angle, 90 degrees, 110 degrees. A light like this may be 5 degrees. So you don't necessarily have to snoot anything. It's kind of already snooted or condensed in that respect.
Are they special made for you, or what kind? Well, like, what is the original purpose of these lights?
Dive guide lights.
Dive guide lights, just normal lights that you take on a night dive.
And that's what's exciting about the industry now, is that there's so many independent and small manufacturers as well as big manufacturers that they're looking at what divers need or what image makers need, and they're developing the tools. So 4 years ago, I had a similar light, almost identical, but it was a very broad beam, and we would take PVC pipe, heat it with a lighter, and kind of melt it over the tip. Well, manufacturers caught on, and they started developing narrower beam lights. If you look at dive guides, often they have very narrow beam lights, sometimes higher in lumen or power, but it's nothing special that I made. It comes straight out of the box that way. I would say 80% of my macro now is shot with lights like this. Almost everything I'm sharing with the dive industry.
Okay, how are your settings on shots like this if you use continuous light with only, like, I mean, the power is not very high, it's like 2,500 lumen, and that is enough? Do you have to open up a lot, or do you like? How do you get enough? Like, how do you expose your picture?
So this is 1,000 lumens. I normally shoot on high. That way I have more control over my camera settings. I'd rather stop down on aperture, go to a faster shutter. I typically lock in my ISO. With my camera system, I found that anything above 400 ISO, I have the chance of getting noise or grain. And basically, yeah, just put it on high. And because it's so condensed, it appears brighter. The other thing I do is that with traditional floodlights, you may be shooting this far away. With a light like this, I may be shooting 12 inches or 18 inches away. So you get the full effect because light tapers off based on distance.
I was really surprised when I saw you working there that you're not like, I would expect that you basically like overlight the scene completely, almost burning everything, but it's not necessary. Like when you do that, you can actually see the effect even if you don't look through the camera and, you know, like close down the aperture and na. So I actually can see that, and it's also not, I mean, I never see that any of the critters react in a, you know, shying way or anything. It's just, yeah, it's just a very natural.
And I guess it's important to note that when I'm not doing the colored light and just trying to do black backgrounds, if I expose or if I light the subject and it's very bright, and then I compensate my camera settings for the subject, everything else will go dark and it'll crush the black.
I see. But we want colorful backgrounds, so we don't want to do that. Right. Okay, another question. Massimiliano, good friend. A snoot video light can be used in video shooting. If so, how is it better to adjust the direction of the light from above, from the side, or else?
There's no like strict rule. You can use traditional lighting methods, which is key light from the front, a little bit of fill light from the side so that you have less shadows, and maybe a rim light or three-quarter light. But I suggest to people, just get crazy. You can do just one backlight and do silhouettes. You can do straight overhead, depending on the subject. If it's got big bulging eyes and you do it from below or straight above, you may get like more of a sinister look, and sometimes that kind of goes hand in hand with the subject. If you only have one light, use one light. Not everybody needs to swim around with 6 lights. I mean, there's drawbacks of carrying 6 or 5 lights around underwater.
Yeah,
it's
you're
excessive.
not actually the one carrying those. It's always the guides and the carrying those.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay. Eric is asking, do you have any tips for spotting small, interesting things on a dive? That's basically the same thing. You're not discovering anything. It's always the guys do that.
I have a basic understanding of the underwater world. I know where some critters are, but you cannot replace a good spotter. And I didn't say guide. There's a difference between a dive guide and a spotter. A spotter is somebody who's trained to identify macro critters. And if you get a local who's really good, he's diving those dive sites almost every day. So not only does he know the environment that certain species live in, but he knows what dive sites may have the blue ring octopus, the hairy frogfish, the rhinopeus. And something that I learned recently is that if you go to a country like Indonesia or Maldives or Philippines, a lot of these spotters from different resorts grew up together, or they may live in the same village. So they actually have group text. And I would put a request in and say, hey, do you know where A, B, or C is? They would get on their phone to this group text and put the request out to 20 guides.
Okay, this sounds very elaborated and professional. Like you might think, yeah, because you're Evan Sherman, you have all these kind of things. Actually, if you go to Siladen or if you go to Nat Lembe or wherever you want to go and shoot your amazing macro stuff, this is part of the game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like you're not, you know, looking around in the village going like, hey, do you know critters? No, it's like you have that as an asset that you can use.
I've seen it used in wide-angle destinations too. I mean, it's kind of a commonplace now in certain regions around the world, which benefits the shooter. You have something on your list, and that's another thing. I travel with a wish list. There are certain things I want to see. I research if the species is in that area, but I give the list to the dive guide. Sometimes I even laminate it, and I ask them to carry it around.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of a little bit of a control freak, I noticed.
Whoa.
So you've called me an animal, a control freak.
No, I mean, in that sense, I think we had a little bit of a laugh when we saw how everything works. And then there is like the nice spotter guys, they come around and they're kind of excited showing something, and he's always like, if he's in a good mood, he will go and shoot it for a minute. But sometimes he's just going like,
No, it's got to be worthy.
He's
You only
a busy
get
guy.
70 minutes underwater. You got to use your time wisely.
no, I mean, I was very impressed. Like before going to the dive, you would have like a group meeting on a boat. I mean, we just go like, should we have another coffee or something to drink and maybe sit there and enjoy the sun? And he's like, okay, guys, it works like this, I want to look for this and that, and if I do this, don't be offended. I'm still your friend, but I just have to manage my time. And no. So it's pretty
easy
cool.
to
Very
communicate,
efficient.
and
Yeah.
I don't want to offend any dive guides, and they don't know. When guests come to resorts, they have no idea what the guest wants to see, what's special to them or what's common. So I just sit down with the guides and I talk to them. And I found it very, very resourceful if they can skip over certain subjects that I either am not interested in or I already have footage of, and just focus my 70 minutes on specifics.
No, it was amazing because you haven't met the people before, but after one dive, you're already a team.
Yep.
No, it's really
Bros.
cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Bros. Let's see if there's something else in the question that we have to answer. The difference in an experienced dive's ability to spot interesting things on a reef is dramatic, and I would like to improve my ability. Okay, this all points towards use a spotter. Don't even try to look for yourself, but learn from the spotters as much as you can.
I don't rely completely on a spotter, but again, it's advantageous to utilize their time and their resources.
Yeah.
Do I find stuff on my own? Yes, a little bit, but often.
But you're not like having sometimes a crew around you that you basically just not even set up your stuff anymore alone. You still do that. Like you do your lights, you do your things. It's
I would
not like
I would never allow that. It's kind of the enjoyment of all of it, the challenge.
Okay. Elsie. Oh, nice. Question from Elsie. We know her. What would be your best tips for starting macro videography in terms of equipment, lens, tripod, lights, and of skills? Best ways of stabilization and for not disturbing marine life.
So with gear, if you can afford 2 lights, it's better than 1. But if you can only afford 1 light, make do with what you have. 1 light's going to create a lot of shadows and shape. Tripod's always recommended. And a good macro lens. Once you build your base skills, a diopter will help. As far as, what was the other part of the question?
I think what you need and how do you stabilize?
As far as skills, I suggest that people start shooting not only things that don't move, but maybe even just coral patterns. And don't go on a live, healthy, large reef to do that. Find muck, find a small coral piece or coral head, and just start shooting patterns. Because again, if you can't shoot hard coral that is not moving at all, there's no way you're going to shoot an octopus or a shrimp or a crab that's kind of on the go.
Cool. Why do we have this in here? It's just an example of a tripod, different things. Like this one is with the fixed arms.
Fixed arms.
And
Adjustable
extended
arms. Yep.
Okay. Another thing that I would like to talk a little bit about, like, we've been talking a lot about how can you bring macro things filming to the next level. And we always kind of come to the conclusion, if you combine it with other things, and this is also how our project came along, because we wanted to do like a portrait of a place, in this case, Siladen Resort and Spa in Bunaken. And we were trying to find an idea how we can actually integrate everything that's there, because it's one of the locations that you do not have one specific highlight. You don't have like, I don't know, the sperm whale aggregation or anything like that, that you go there and this is what you want to see, but it's like a place where there's so many different things. You have a macro. It's great for macro, but there's also amazing wide angle things and also above water things. And I think this is could be an interesting example to see what our solution was, how we can actually integrate all of that into one little story about the place or portrait about the place. And the funny thing is that when he started with the colorful lights, that was basically the idea. So the island of color is about using the color as a red line to connect everything that is there, which also fits perfectly because it's not only the colorful sunset or the colorful vegetation or the corals, it's also the critters and everything else. And to combine all of this into one portrait of one place is interesting. It's also something where I think can link wide-angle shots with macro shots because most of the time they don't really have anything in common, like in terms of storytelling, and we even have data freediving in it. So it's kind of a multi kind of thing. And I think we show that first, and then we can talk a little bit about what was going on when we were shooting that.
Yeah.
You will grow up someday. If you simply close your eyes, as if you were listening to music. Still see, can't get it out of my mind. You don't have to try to understand anything. Started counting up the losses, weight sinking, water began to rise. Reaching in the darkness, I came here for an answer. It's the nerve ends in your skin turning electric vibrations into heat and temperature. I'm ready to fall. I'm leaving it all behind. I'm ready to fall. All of these ghosts, I'm letting them go this time. So cut the line. It's your eyes that are turning the sun into light, and in that way, you are creating the world. But don't hurry anything. Just watch whatever is happening. I've been holding in everything. I just wanna say the words out loud. I won't let it get the best of me. Gravity holds the key for me now. Be entirely content of what is. I'm ready to fall. I'm leaving it all behind. I'm ready to fall. All of these ghosts, I'm letting them go this time. So cut the lines. The same sort of feeling you have as if you were settling down into an extremely comfortable bed. And soon you will find that the so-called outside world and the so-called inside world come together, and all you're doing is watching it.
We should definitely do more things together.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I want to go.
Cool.
Again.
Good. Amazing place, amazing colors. Anyway, we have to say, to be fair, some of the wide-angle shots, especially above water, were not organically or naturally colored by any light, but by some creative guy in post-production, which is doesn't matter because it just fits amazingly to your footage from underwater. So I hope
Good
nobody
stuff.
minds.
Good stuff.
Good. Another question here from Swenjamin. That's an amazing name. What frame rate and resolution would you typically film in when shooting macro without distorting the image quality and making it grainy?
Kind of a two-part question. You've got the grainy aspect, and then you've got the resolution aspect. With resolution, 4K's kind of got a lot of attention, but as I've heard you mention, it really comes down to what is the distribution platform. And if your goal is to put this on the internet, 4K isn't always necessary. And so HD will work. And the benefit of HD is that a lot of cameras can shoot higher frame rates, which allows you to do slow motion. So with resolution, it's a balance based on what your camera can handle. Do I like 4K or 3840 by 2160? I do. But there are times where I would take HD with a higher frame rate so I can do the slow motion.
Yeah, we also have to say that all the things that you've been shooting was with a Sony Alpha.
Yep.
Right? And there is, I don't think you shoot double the frame rate. Do you shoot?
I can't.
Well,
that's
but
a
you
shame.
also don't need. Nah.
Exactly. So with the camera system I have a choice. I can do HD at up to 120 frames a second, or I can do 4K at 30. And I elect to go for the resolution because often I'm sharing my work on large screens. And so that's where the resolution will kind of come into play.
Okay, and why is slow motion such a cool thing other than I can see the yawning much longer?
So when you look at behavior, sometimes it only lasts a second or 2 seconds. And if you shoot a higher frame rate, it allows you to increase the duration of that behavior without it getting all jerky. So for example, standard video in USA is 30 frames. If you shoot 60, you can slow it down 50%. So 1 second becomes 2 seconds, and it's smooth. Some people, they just slow their clips down, it starts to get all jerky, and they don't understand the concept of frame rate. So
I think it also helps with balancing out a little bit of the movement. And I think even if you have, like, everybody knows we have like stabilizing plugins to make footage look much smoother. The more information you have, the more frames you have, the better the plugin can work. So it's always good to have that. Unless you're Evan Sherman and you don't need this kind of fancy stuff and just do your things manually.
Did you like my robot, by the way?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So then the second part is the graininess. And as mentioned, if you look at grain is an ISO. It's an effective ISO, and that's basically the sensitivity of the chip. Chips vary throughout the industry, and again, I've tested my camera system, and basically anything above 400, I risk grain. There are times that I'll bring it up beyond 400 in an emergency or if I have to, but when you're shooting this far away and you've got enough light, it's almost never necessary.
Okay, I mean, for me, I always think that the frame rate is a little bit more important than even if I get a little bit of grain in ISO. There is another cool plugin called Neat Video where you can actually remove all of this noise. It's a little bit processor intensive, but there is always kind of a balance. It's very difficult to say don't do this or don't do that.
Correct.
If you want to have a little bit more flexibility in pumping the frame rates up, then maybe you have to do something with the ISO. I would never change the shutter speed, but I would definitely mess around with the ISO a little bit.
And the hardest thing is there's so many camera systems that there's variables between all camera systems.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we definitely want to do... this was not the right button to push. We definitely want to do... Can you read this?
Is he allowed to say it out loud?
What the fuck?
No! 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 No, I don't know how you come up with something
You
like
just
this.
set me up.
What the photo? Obviously. No, we've
Are you
been...
going to be banned from like Facebook and YouTube?
No, I think you're going to be
We're
cut
working
out.
on
You're
it.
just going to be a huge beep.
Just
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Nice,
We've
nice.
been showing some of your stills from your videos to other photographers, and they didn't know that. Like the game is basically we show you a few photos.
Okay, I have no idea what's going on right now.
Yeah, that's great. That's why we do that. We show you a few photos, like everybody's doing that. Not everybody, but some have to do that, and you're cool and chilled enough to do that. Nice. That's really funny now.
I'm scared.
So the idea is, we show you a photo,
Okay,
and obviously you know who shot this shot.
Alex Mustard. or Alex.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Oh, you're doing pretty good.
I told you, I
don't
study
like
up.
that. Okay. So it's about who shot it, what is it, and where is it shot?
I think it's Red Sea, and it's some type of. It's a fish.
That's a good start.
You're not even looking at it. I mean, come on.
It's
Yes, it's a macro feeding. You are amazing. You got the photographer and everything else.
I rely on spotters. My marine life ID thing it's weak, but
It doesn't look like it.
Alex is
Are you
a
happy
stud.
that we only do that with one photo?
We're one and done?
No. Another one.
Oh, this is nice.
Looks like sheephead. So that would have to be off the west coast.
Are you kidding me?
West coast of USA. And
Andrew Marriott.
Andrew Marriott.
Well, great.
There you go.
Oh, well, you got the sheephead right and you got Los Angeles right.
You got to cover the mic though.
Why? I don't want the people to get the impression you're super smart.
Okay.
So, this one, that's an easy one. Come on. You've been following all the live streams, driving on the Autobahn without speed limit.
Either Red Sea or Maldives, and I don't know the artist.
Who's doing
Black and white.
amazing black and white things? I think if we give you one of the programs, do we have a program here? Maybe you're gonna find. Maybe you'll find the answer in here.
Christian.
Yes.
Christian.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah. Where's he at? Nice work,
amazing.
buddy.
Butterfly fish in Fakarava.
Crocodile fish, somewhere in Southeast Asia.
Crocodile
You're a
fish.
beast, but
And
Southeast Asia is not right.
anybody out there can help me?
I don't even know what a crocodile
Anybody?
fish is.
I don't even know what to call. Yeah.
Hold on. Let's see who else is shooting macro.
I hope you screw up on this one because the next one gonna be very, very, very easy.
I'm going Alex T.
Yes, that's correct.
Jesus Christ.
Amazing. I don't know how you do that. So I always like those photos here. Like, do you think you can find out who shot that?
Greg.
That's the toughest
Thank you.
one.
Thank you. This would be off of the coast of Baja, I'm guessing.
Yes.
So the area I think is Magdalena Bay, and shot it.
Greg Lecoeur. Yes. Not only beautiful photos, also very beautiful signature.
I know.
Yeah, Strat Marlin. Okay, we have one that you cannot guess. You cannot guess.
Wow.
I think it would be one of the most obvious places to actually do that.
So I'm going with Saladin.
No. Oh yeah, that would be the most. I mean, the turtles over there are so many, but no. This is Indonesia, Gili
Islands.
Gili Trawangan.
So
yes.
who's shooting in the Gillies? Anybody?
You're not gonna get this. You're not gonna get this.
Finally.
She's sitting here. Oh, she's sitting here. Or he. Doesn't matter. Yeah. The amazing Inca Creswell. Amazing.
Hey.
Amazing. Yay. Okay. I think enough torture.
Thank you.
But you've been doing pretty well.
Thank you.
I'm not too happy about it, but I have to admit you did that very well. Okay. Hamdan, your turn.
Yeah, no, I've just been watching the live streams, and it's very similar to our first talk, where you, I think more than anyone, helped shed a light on macro for younger videographers and photographers to see. So we touched on it earlier in terms of how you're so creative with your lighting, and lighting is such a big part of macro. Like you were showing all your simple garden tools that you use. But if you're looking at actually buying the lights, someone was wondering, what do you look for? If there's so many options available these days, you were saying there's so many companies popping up. What should I be looking for if I'm looking for a good macro light?
So the first thing I look at in all lights is user-changeable batteries. I've had rechargeable lights, and if you're going back to the resort, if you're just doing a one tank dive, no problem.
Yeah.
But if you're doing a 2 or 3 tank dive, you start to inherit challenges. So user-changeable battery is key. With macro, narrow beam. Not too worried about the lumens, because again, I'm shooting so close.
Yeah.
And overall quality. Machined aluminum body, double O-rings, things like that. I think lighting is one of the most saturated aspects or products in the dive industry. There's easily, at the show, easily 10 or 15 manufacturers. Yeah. So go with the company that you've had success with, and just try and find something narrow.
Yeah.
Narrow and tight.
Perfect. And the other question was actually from Darius, who's here as well. He's also been talking on the live stream. Do you want to ask it, or should I? So Darius was talking about, in terms of framing your shots, you have a very creative way of doing it with your tripod and your lights. So for each shot, roughly, how long does it take till you've set up the infrastructure for your shots?
Depending on the subject, I mean, it may only take 2 minutes to set up, but I kind of calibrate my time. And if I'm going to go through the process of setting up all the lights, working the tripod, settling in, I'm willing to dedicate the rest of the dive. Sometimes I'll start to set up and the animal bails. And I just, demoralized, kind of grab all my equipment, put it back on a giant D-ring, and swim down the reef. But if I'm willing to set all this stuff up, and stuff starts to work out, I'm going to dedicate up to the entire dive. And then sometimes I'll chase, not literally chase that subject, but figuratively, where I'll go back the next day or in the afternoon. The blue ring octopus shot in the beginning of the video took me 10 days of going after blue rings because I just couldn't get it. Blue rings don't stay still. So, as my buddy Mike Bartik would say, I found the dumbest blue ring in the sea, and he just decided to hang out long enough for me to get about 20 seconds. But it could take 2-3 minutes, especially if you get in a rhythm.
Perfect.
Great.
Nice.
Really admire your creativity, mindset, and you've been healing us from not being so great macro fans so far. You know his sticker on his housing.
We don't need to do this on live.
No,
yes.
we need to do this on live.
Remind me, I forgot.
He has a sticker on his housing saying, I'd rather eat fire coral than to shoot macro. I think he's going to peel that sticker off and replace it with something else.
Now Evan hates me. We were such good friends.
No.
Yeah. The bromance is over,
It's
buddy.
done. Yeah,
All right.
Damn it.
I think here's your applause, Evan. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Okay, weekdays are over. Tomorrow is another day, another weekend day, and in the morning we're gonna have at 11:15 Tim Ho here again, who will explain us a little bit, or not a little bit, 4 steps to win an underwater photo competition. That's gonna be very informative. If you haven't seen the earlier talk that he's been doing about how to set up your compact camera, sounds maybe I saved the time to watch it, but watch it. It's very interesting. Everybody learns something. Then Greg and I will talk about the Antarctica project, a lot of cold water things, and he's been winning an award with a few of the photos, and we show his amazing photographs here, obviously with his signature in the corner, but we do that. And then after that we have Fred Boyle here. You're going to be here tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to talk with him about foam parties and how we're going to steal his BMX bike in the Azores. What all of this has to do with freediving filmmaking, you're going to find out tomorrow. And we are out. Today is a big party here in the hall. But tomorrow, Saturday, if you happen to be here, are you here tomorrow evening?
Sure.
Great. Because then you can come over to the stage and we have a party tomorrow, 25th. Evan will be here, Greg will be here, Guillaume will be here, everybody will be here. We're going to have an amazing performance by Lutz and Antonio, who will sing and play the guitar, and everybody's going to have a great time. So, thanks for today. Thanks, Evan. Great for having you, and we see you guys tomorrow.